What up guys, Cody Krueger here, and I just got back from the gym and I really didn't have any ideas of a video for today. My bike's kind of out of commission right now. I have no spokes in my back wheel. Luckily my friend Draper's coming up. He has a spare rim that I am going to be able to take spokes from, so thank you, shout out to him. I'll link his channel down below. He has some really cool stuff going on in his channel, but for today I just really kind of want to do like a commentary. I haven't done one in a while and I really enjoy making commentaries because they're just something different. I ride my bike every day. I just feel like I do the same stuff every day. I go to the gym, I ride my bike, I go home, I edit the video, I put it up, and like commentaries just offer so much. And the one thing that I like so much about them is they open up a conversation for us, for me, to my viewers, to you guys that view this video. We get to talk and and I get to hear your guys' opinions and your dislikes and your likes and what you liked about and what you didn't, and it just really helps me grow as a person. And for this commentary, it's going to be kind of different. It's kind of a broad topic. I kind of want to talk about change, and what I mean about change is I mean like change in my life, change that I see going around and the things that I'm involved in, like BMX wise and video game wise, like all the changes and all the gossip and drama that comes with change. And I really want to do this commentary, and I did a lot of research about it. Like, I'll show you guys. I have all these notes that I took down on like articles that I read, but none of those articles really pertain to what I was really thinking about when I thought about change. They were all thinking about changes in the business industry, what you should do if your boss throws a sudden change at you. And I was like, this is just the tone in which these articles were talking were way too serious for what I was really looking for. So I'm gonna be talking about change in my life and just changes around me. And I'm gonna start out with talking about changes in my life. What's really changed? Why do I want to talk about this? The first big change that went on in my life, I broke up with my girlfriend of 3 years. I dated someone for 3 years. We shared the same life together for 3 years. And that really changed me as a person. I disliked it so much. I thought it was the worst thing. I thought it was the end of the world. And I didn't see that like it was inevitable. Like, you go through change no matter what, whether it be a girlfriend or breaking up with you, your boyfriend breaking up with you, you change in your diet, change in the way you think, change in your mood. Anything can really affect the way you feel. And then I moved out to here. I moved out of my house that I lived in for 20 years, always had my family around me, always had that comfort of home around me, to this apartment that you see behind me in the middle of nowhere. And that is a lot of change in a short period of time, and it happened in a month. And what I went through was more of I would say an emotional change. I felt like I had a loss of control. I wasn't in control of my own life because I depended on other people to make me happy. And that's like the first time that I figured out how important it is to be in tune with yourself, understand yourself as a person, because if you are always involved in someone else's life, you never really get to understand what makes you tick, what biases you have, why you feel a certain way, because you're always worrying about the other person. So sometimes change is a good thing. Sometimes a loss of control is a good thing. Sometimes it might spiral out of control and it might feel like the end of the world, and sometimes you end up in the middle of nowhere in an apartment where you get to do you get to be yourself, you get to understand yourself, you get to work on yourself. And change is sometimes a good thing. And I feel like one important thing that I learned about the change that I went through is you always got to listen to your emotions. You always got to listen to your emotions. Your emotions are there to help you. They aren't there to completely destroy your life. We have emotions for a reason. We feel certain ways for a reason, and you always got to listen to those emotions. But I'm gonna read some stuff that I found interesting online, and maybe it'll help you guys out, and then I'll start talking about changes that are happening outside my life. Obviously, people like to be in control, because when you're in control, you know what's going to happen. But however, with change, you know, you can become anxious and emotional, and it's important, like I said, to listen to these emotions. If you have a feeling about a certain aspect in your life and it changes suddenly, you're kind of in the right to withstand that change. But, you know, it isn't good enough to really say, you know, I don't like this because it changed, you know. You gotta really question yourself. You gotta get to know yourself. Why do you feel this way? Why are you standoffish? Why does this change make you feel uncomfortable? You know, uncertainty. You know, this is something that I found really important. Uncertainty. People don't like feeling like they are blindly walking off a cliff. And that's kind of how it felt when, you know, I broke up with my girlfriend of 3 years. I felt like, you know, I didn't know the world around me. You know, I was in my own little world for so much, and then I was pushed into the real world, and it was kind of like blindly walking off a cliff, you know. During that time I was in the relationship, I would say that I would much rather go through something that's familiar, that I feel uncomfortable with, than, you know, go blindly walk off a cliff, go into something that, you know, is foreign territory to me. But, you know, people generally won't go through change unless they feel safety, unless there's some sort of safety net around them. I don't know what your safety net would be, but, you know, my family was my safety net. They told me that I would be okay, so, you know, I'm here today, I'm okay, so that was my safety net. Another thing that I found interesting, which is something that is kind of obvious, is people dislike changes. No. People dislike surprises. And, you know, surprises can happen at any time. Poor timing, for example. Anything can happen. Change or a surprise can happen at the worst time in your life. But, you know, you need to acknowledge your feelings. You need to understand why you're feeling that certain emotion, like I said. And the most important thing to get from this is never jump to conclusions. Unless you have hard evidence to feel a certain way, never jump to conclusions. And, you know, during this surprise, during this poor timing, during this change, you should try to prepare yourself. You know, make a plan how to approach the situation. Learn as much as possible about your situation. And, you know, that kind of goes with what's going on in the BMX industry right now. You know, between like scooters and bikes and all that drama, you know, people just take other people's words for it. They say, oh, scootering is stupid, and then everyone, you know, jumps on that bandwagon that scootering is dumb and it's for 5-year-old kids to get in your way in the skate park. You know, people could feel the same way about BMX, and with all this bickering you get nowhere, because no one has hard evidence, no one really knows what they're talking about. And, you know, that's kind of why people withstand change. You know, people are like, I don't like this, another person's like, I agree with you, and they say, I'm not gonna allow scooters to take over. And also, not even with scooters, people always give Adam such a hard time, saying, you know, he's making all these little kids come into BMX, and all these little kids are so annoying at skate parks and stuff. But most of you don't realize is that's our future generation. That's what is going to keep BMX going. Why would you not want the sport that you love to be shown throughout the world? Why would you not want little kids to pick up your passion as a little kid? That really doesn't make any sense. And I think people withstand change so much because you don't have any evidence. They don't know what they're talking about. They feel a certain way, they really don't question that emotion, and they just go with it, and it really just creates horrible situations for everyone around them. Everyone in the BMX industry, and, you know, that goes with video games too, because if you guys don't know, I play a handful of COD, and COD right now, people are like, oh, I don't want exosuits, I don't want boost jumping, I want feet on the ground. They don't want any movement. They just want a one-directional movement, feet on the ground, like it was in the old days. But you can't always have your cake and eat it too. Luckily, this year they're coming out with 2 CODs, Modern Warfare, the first Modern Warfare that ever came out, and Infinite Warfare. And, you know, this time you get your cake and eat it too. But people generally feel a certain way and they stick to that emotion, and it just creates a hard time for everyone, because no one knows if what other people are saying is true. No one knows if there's hard evidence behind that, because everyone just generally goes with who they feel is right, you know? And that's why it's really important to question yourself and, you know, kind of go into this investigation about why you feel a certain way, because even if you get the same answer as you felt before, at least you learned something about the topic that you've been searching about, and you learn stuff about yourself as a person, you know? It's a win-win. You were killing two birds with one stone, so, you know, might as well. Like I said, people hate uncertainty, but, you know, with change, you have to try to accept uncertainty. It is probably like one of the most important things to do when you're going through a change in your life. And, you know, you just gotta think about it like this. I wrote this down today at the gym. I thought about this. You know, with change comes lessons, and with lessons comes something to be learned and to work on. And that's kind of just how life goes. Whether it's in school, whether it's in life, whether it's learning a trick, you know, you get really frustrated with something, you learn about that trick, you work on that trick, and then you finally land that trick. You go through your life, you live your life, you go through changes, you work on those changes, and then here you are today, you know? That's just how life is, and that's kind of all I have to say about that topic. You know, I'm pretty confident that I covered everything that I wanted to in this video, and I hope you guys found it informative. And if you did, please leave a like. You know, I really want to do more of these commentaries. I feel like it's a way of me being able to open up to you guys, you know, kind of share a piece of my life that I really don't get to show you guys through BMX. And please leave comments below on, you know, other things that I can talk about, other video ideas that I can do, because I'm doing, I don't know if you guys know this, but I'm doing this all summer. This is my job for the summer. Making videos, making content, making entertaining things for you is what I'm trying to do throughout the summer. So your comments are very important. What you guys have to say are very important to me about my videos. You know, I always want to work on myself. I always want to make all my content better. So please give me ideas, please give me feedback, give me anything you want, you know. I always respond back, I always look at your comments, and I'm Cody Krueger. Stay frothy, my friends. I am so
thinking on my
excited.
Trip back. Got some time to kick back. I get whiplash if I stop now. I've been moving on your miles per an hour. Used to be ducking, but I know they see me now. Tell them simmer down if they hating on me.